Hi everyone, my name is Didier Lopes. I'm the co-founder and CEO of OpenBB. OpenBB is building the future workspace for AI-powered investment research. The platform supports teams that are responsible for allocating capital, due diligence, or investment analysis, teams that require compliance, security, but also collaboration. Think of engineers, data scientists, analytics, and all of those that really support analytics functions. When you come into the product, you'll be landing in this page, which is our data connectors page. This shows where all the data from OpenBB is coming from. You've got the my data, which is every data that I have brought, whether it's a CSV, PDF, image, an API endpoint, a custom backend, a database, it's going to be shown here. And then you have package data. That is data that OpenBB offers, and you can basically turn it on and off based on the packages that we offer. And in the longer term, we expect to be adding more and more package data by default. But what can you do with this data? Let's see. I'm going to show you how you can create a new dashboard. And currently the dashboard is empty. And in order to add, you basically add widgets to that dashboard. But let's add a template directly so that you have a lot of data in one go. And this is what it looks like. You can see that there's a ton of data in this dashboard. And there's also these tabs that have been created, which you can actually like fully edit. There's like financials, and you can even change the ticker, and you'll see that the data renders really fast. As you could see here, if you don't want something in particular, you can just delete it. You have this button here that tells you when was the last data update. So if you want the data to be refreshed, you can just click here. It will do a new request, and you have the data up to date. And none of this data is being stored within like OpenBB, which is basically connecting with a backend through an endpoint. Now, let's say that you want to add a new widget. That's really easy. I can do Command K, and then let's say that we want to add a dividend payments widget. I can click here, and then you'll see that has been added simply here. So what is a widget? What is this thing that you are seeing on my screen that I can resize and has access to the Copilot, and I'm bringing to the product? The widget is a combination of three things. You need data, you need a visual to render that data, and then you need metadata, okay? So data could be anything, could be files, structure, could be APIs, could be anything. Visuals is the way that data gets rendered in the dashboard format. And then metadata is what you can check by hovering here or by going into the data connectors page and edit these metadata. And basically, so I could come here, I can go into image, and this is what is a widget, and I can select a different category, a subcategory, which helps me on the search. I can select a different source and even a different description. And so you can see that if I update this here, let's say that the source is DDA2, I'm going to update it. I'm going back into my dashboard, and then I'll over here, and you can see that the DDA2 is pointed right here. Okay. And so the idea here is that you always need to have data being rendered in a certain way into the product. So let's say that I have an API endpoint, so something like this one here. You don't want it to see it like this into the product, right? You want to have a nice way to visualize it. And so that's why the concept of widget becomes important. So you can right click into the product, and then you can click on add data. In this case, it's an API endpoint. I'm gonna call it historical TVL. I'm gonna paste the link. I'm gonna change the metadata. So in this case, I'm gonna say historical TVL with more details. If I wanted to add it, a category, I could say that this is actually crypto, and I could just call it TVL, and then the source, this is DeFi Llama. I test it to make sure it's okay. I add it, and now it's into the product. And what you can see is now that this becomes officially a widget. It becomes officially a widget. There's the metadata, there's the data that has the visualization, and you have the visual. And so that means that now the OpenBB Copilot has access to this data. And bear in mind that we are not storing this data. This data is a pass-through into the product. So you can see last time it was called, but if I click here, it gets recalled again, and then you have all the capabilities of the product, even things like being able to create a chart from this data, or anything else, or even clicking here, and then you have a chart directly. And that's why the visual part is really important. But let's say that you want to bring, for instance, a file. That's also possible. You can add data. I can click here, and I can add this report. which is uploading. It goes into our S3. We suggest a title and the description you can change, and then it becomes available into this dashboard, and you can change page. And so there's multiple types of widgets that we allow users to bring. And I showed you the API example into a table format. I showed you now the PDF, but you could also add one of our actually text widget, which is this one. And this type of widget, for instance, it has the visual, it has the metadata, which is just notes, but it doesn't have content, but you could add it. So you could say investment thesis on Apple, and you could say this is my section 1, it's basically marked down, and then you can have bullet point 1, bullet point 2, and then basically you can go into settings and you can say investment thesis on Apple, and then here you get the idea. So once you save it, basically you see that the metadata was saved and it becomes accessible on the Copilot, so you can ask questions and you have all of this flexibility. And the only thing here that we do is we store these data, the PDF, and every time there's static files or there's text, we store it in a S3 bucket currently on OpenBB. And but for customers, what we do is if they want to store the data on their own servers, we can help them set that connection within their own like S3 buckets in a way that is secure and safe. Let's say that you have your data on a Snowflake or MySQL SQLite. You will likely want to have access to that data within OpenBB. And so we make that accessible to you in a way that is very, very easy. So you can say add selection, add connection, go into databases. In this case, I'm going to select Snowflake. I'm going to add my username. I'm going to add my password, and I'm going to add my account. I click next. In this case, I already have the SQL query, which I copied, but first I'm going to add a name. So I'm going to call it crimes. I'm going to call it analytics user, my role, the analytics one, and then I need to select which database I'm going to use, the statistics one, and then I can put the SQL query that I already have here. As I mentioned before, is recommended that you have some metadata. So in this case, I'm going to put it in the economy and in a crime category, and the description is number of incidents is already here selected. And then I click add, and that becomes automatically accessible on my dashboard. So that means that you can have someone on your team that already has all of these queries done. But the benefit from your point of view is that you can just call for the widget now crimes going forward, and you'll have access to that data. And we even allow you to create some dynamic parameters so that you can interact with your data on your database faster. So in this case, let's say that you click here on the SQL icon, you have here the entire query that I've just used, and you'll have here some information about the dynamic parameters. In this case, I'm going to add it. So I'm going to add this parameter is going to be my postal code. Actually, not my postal code, this is San Francisco. But basically what this allows me to do is to do here 1, and I save it. And now the benefit is that this entire query is going to run based on the parameter that is here. So if you change that postal code, it's going to work. So let's do 02. Let's hope that this works. Perfect. And we are now looking at the 94102 postal code data, and then you have all the normal capabilities of the product. So this is a good way for if you already have your data on Databricks, AWS, GCP, Azure, to connect all of it into OpenBB and have your team that is doing research, analysis, due diligence, being able to access all of it from one place. Let's say that you want more control over the data that you bring into the product. That's not a problem. We have open sourced the way we enable users to connect any type of data into the product. And there's this repository that's called Backend for Terminal Pro. And there's here a few examples that you have connections with Supabase, MindDB, Elasticsearch, ClickHouse, ArcticDB. And you can even bring like Plotly, shards, like data, and it gives you full control. All you need is to know is about this widgets.json file, which basically sets the specifications so that our product knows how to interpret this data. And so when you come into the product here, and let's say you want to bring your own data, you do the same thing. You go into add data, and in this case you just click on custom backend, and it will have a name, it will have a URL, and then you are able to add it. And so what our team was able to build, it was they were able to connect, to create a backend from our open source repository, which has almost 30,000 GitHub stars, and integrate all of those data endpoints into our product. And so now if I go into our data connectors, I have OpenBB platform here, and you can scroll and you have access to a ton of data that is coming through my machine using my own API keys for these data vendors, and then rendering it in Pro. And so if I click here on the Orchid Admiral, I can look for it, and let's say that I'm gonna do Fred series, for instance. I can click on this one here, and then as a rate, we're gonna use unemployment rate, and you'll see that I have access to that data that I am running locally on my machine, and in this case is using OpenBB platform, the one with almost 30,000 GitHub stars. And the nice part about it is that it means that you can bring any type of data. And so recently, the most interesting case that we built for our customer was a Gmail integration. And now we're also in the discussion of discussing like data widgets, so they can manage their fleets, their ports, and also their dry bulk commodities cargo that they ship around the world. They are a public shipping company, so it's been a very interesting like use case. But we're always happy to create more widgets to basically render the data in a better way for our customers. In part one, I went over what we allow users to bring in terms of data, which is pretty much anything, right? And the reality is that like firms are consuming more data than ever before, but the human capacity to be able to process that data has stayed roughly the same, right? Like let's say you want to compare like two earnings transcript, like your first thought is maybe to summarize one, then summarize the other, and then maybe try to understand the difference. And it takes a long time. It turns out that large language models are pretty good at this type of tasks, not just between two earnings, but two data sets, 3, 4 data sets, and between data that is structured and unstructured at the same time. And the models are getting better every day, and the cost is going lower. And so we started building a product not on where we are today, but where we think we're going to be in a couple of years. And we started thinking that, look, RAG is great. So basically being able to get access to an embedding where it mentions something, providing into the large language model and getting the output is great. But ultimately, as a user that is doing like research or due diligence on a company or anything else, you don't want to just have access to that information and then leave it at that. You want to bring it back into the dashboard, or you want to interact with it like later on. So you want to refeed it back into the data of the product. And so we really started thinking about, okay, what is the future going to be in terms of investment research when it comes with a copilot? And so we came up with the OpenBB copilot, which is basically an agent that sits on the side of the dashboard that has access to all of the data on the dashboard, but also all of the data that you have on the backend. And so you will be able to extract insights and patterns on versus all of the data that you brought in. And once he outputs that response, whether it's like markdown text, whether it's a table, in the future we're gonna add code interpreter as well, so you will be able to do calculations between different data sets. All of that data, like images output, will be able to be refed into the dashboard of the product. And so an example I want to share is this one. I'm going to select this text, and I'm going to force the copilot to look into the content of this PDF in this case. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this list of questions. It tells me what is happening. It tells me that he's querying user files. In this case, he knows that he's looking at that one. I can also hide the left bar so we have more space. Here we go. It tells me the initial conversion rate, it tells me the conditions for conversion, it tells me the coupon rate and frequency of payments, it tells me the forced conversion conditions, and it tells me the QSIP, which is exactly what I was looking for. And then it tells me the citation. And in our next iteration, actually, we allow the users to click on the citation, and it tells you straight where it is on the PDF. And that allows you to not just trust, but verify, right? And so it allows you to check whether these values exist, but it still saves you a lot of time, even if you just need to do the verification, particularly when you can just click and it goes to the page where that is mentioned. And so that's on our next series that's going to happen. But now what was I was saying earlier, and I want to show you, is that you will be able to create a widget coming from this data. And so when you click create, now it becomes available here, and we can add the Copilot, and now it becomes available here. And so you can reutilize it onto the Copilot, or you can have someone from the team now being able to leverage it. And because this is our text widget, note widget, you will be able to do changes on it because it is a markdown at the end of the day. So I'll be able to do something like hello. Let's say that you are following a few companies, like 20 or wherever. You can create a watch list of the tickers that you are following, and you can group with an earnings transcript as per the example that I just mentioned. And then basically what that means is that you can click on the company that you want to have more information, Apple or Nvidia, and then the earnings gets updated immediately. And so what that allows you to do is to have a list of earnings questions that you want to always ask to this group of companies whenever the earnings transcript comes out. And so in this, if you were to use another rack system, you'd have to, upload document or extract this report from the SEC files. In our case, it's as simple as I'm going to add this NVIDIA earnings transcript as a context of Copilot. I'm going to add the earnings questions, and I'm going to say answer all these earnings questions using earnings transcript from NVIDIA. And you will be able to analyze all of the data from the earnings and then basically create the output based on these questions. And so you see things like create a table with column with financial metrics, sentence in the earnings where it was extracted, and then I ask it to double check the information to make sure that it's accurate, and then you can see what is the guidance. And you can see here that he responds to the guidance questions, but it also creates a table for me. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the capabilities of our product is that table can be refed into the dashboard. And so now I could create a table from it that becomes accessible here on the terminal, and I can auto size all columns, for instance. And then of course, if I wanted to have access to this data on something like Excel, it's just simple as just clicking to clipboard and then pasting it. As I mentioned, our OpenBB Copilot is not just a ChatGPT wrapper. There's a lot of workflows that have been really optimized to improve the life of the users. And so I'm going to show a few of them. So let's say that you go to the investor relations page on NVIDIA, and you have access to a link that talks about their last earnings. You could do something like what are the highlights from, and then paste the link. And in this case, you can even create a widget from it directly using our iframe widget, which is super nice. But basically what happens is as soon as I press enter, the large language model has access to data within this page. And so you can highlight that. And now let's say that you don't want to have this iframe, or you want to add your own notes. You could go back into the process that I've shared in the past, where you can create this as a widget. But let's say that in this case, this happened in August 28th. And what happened was that they beat expectations, but still the stock price declined on the day. So one thing you can do is to use this @web concept. And what it does is it basically utilizes the Perplexity API under the hood. And so that means that basically it has access to the internet and has access to the news on the day, and has access to all of the data that Perplexity has access to, which is great, because then the user doesn't really need to have this data available, right? And then finally, another thing that you can do then is basically leveraging data that you don't have access here, but is available on the backend. And so you can do something like this. Utilizing only analysts that updated their price target after last Wednesday, let's do after 28 August 2024. Create a table that contains date of revision, name analyst firm, okay. And now what we expect is that it will grab data from the backend, Here we go. And so now we have all of this data that is being utilized of people that updated their price targets for NVIDIA after the date of August 28. And you can see, you know, the context, you can see the query that has been run, and you can even add the widget that has that data. So you can compare against the data that it says here, in this case NVIDIA, and you can look if the values are correct, which is super helpful for users, and allows you to, you know, validate the data, but also allows you to have access to the data much faster if you just want to have access to it quickly. But so you've got the option, you know. What I'm going to attempt here is something that is much harder, just from the nature of what it is. Basically, I'm going to use this prompt. What it does is it goes onto the backend and it goes grab the stock price of Apple on terms of like a day by day. It computes the average on a monthly basis per month, sorry, and then it uses data from that is on the dashboard with the price target by analyst and computes the average of that data. And so you can see that right now the interface is not the best right now, because this was like our first iteration, and you can see that is overly communicative. It's basically telling you everything that is happening under the hood, and there's a lot of steps to make sure that this works, but it's really promising, and this is without coding interpreter yet. So once we start unlocking the code interpreter, the capabilities of the Copilot are going to be really enhanced, and that is due to our entire architecture around the widgets and around the metadata, and it really shows the promise of what we're building, and that we are building a Copilot that's truly agentic and can come into the workflow, take the widget that is necessary in order to use that data to do like a correlation or create a table that can compare the two. Because now what I could do simply is create a widget from a table, for instance, you know, and then let's say that you want to create a chart with this data. We can do like a line chart. That's something that is possible. And so you can see the door of opportunities for users. Once the models get better or agentic workflows get better, we can iterate more on when metadata users have more data, and basically the data that they create from the Copilot goes back into the dashboard and can be reutilized at a later stage, or from a colleague that has access to that shared dashboard or to the same backend. And so that's kind of the direction towards the one we're building. Now, I showed quite a few things around AI that are possible within the Terminal Pro. The main one is the OpenBB Copilot. In this case, we are leveraging mostly OpenAI, but we've also used like Anthropic where it makes sense, and we use whatever model is best for the task at hand. So if there's an image being uploaded into the chat, we may use like a model from Anthropic. If there's something that involves reasoning, it may be OpenAI. If there is something that, you know, involves for us to have like a bigger context, maybe we use something from Google, Gemini. And so we always want OpenBB Copilot to be the best in breadth in terms of like the specific workflow from users. Now, having said that, we understand that some users don't want their data to be pushed onto OpenAI, even if it's given as a context, right? And so we create the same concept of bring your own data. We created the same concept of bring your own Copilot. And it basically means that, look, if you don't want to use OpenAI or Anthropic, you should be on your rights to not do so. And so the way we handle that is we allow users to bring their own Copilot. And so you can click here, you can say, let's say I want to add my own Copilot, and you can even click here where you see the example of Copilots that we have integrated that users can use as a reference. And in this case, I already have two incorporated here. I'm gonna go into the Mistral here, which I'm running locally, so it should be this code here. So it's called Mistral Example Copilot. I called it AI-powered financial Copilot that uses Mistral large as its LLM. There's a thumbnail for it. I say which properties I want to give it. So this Copilot.json file is what specifies the specs that Pro understands based on the endpoint that is given. And I say that there's streaming, there's function calling that is allowed, so it has access to data that is available on the product. And does it support documents? In this case, it doesn't support documents. And this is the query. I'm running it locally, and now basically that means that I can say something like hello. and this will hit my endpoint locally, which in this case is pushing it to Mixtral. But let's imagine that you are running a llama tree from Meta locally, or you have a model that is much smaller, fine-tuned, and you want to use it. You have built something that has RAG internally with some internal documents. You can integrate any of those copilots into OpenBB and just use OpenBB as the interface to communicate with that copilot, because wherever the data is, then you can create a widget back from it that becomes accessible here, which then you can refeed into the product if you want, so that's why we built this architecture, is to make sure that the data, there wouldn't be no leakage. And so then there was an issue, which is like we built a few workflows to make the life of users easier. And so things like, let's say we go back into this copilot, things like the chat name. If you start chatting with the copilot, it will update the name based on the content. So for instance, if I say hello, it should say something like greetings or financial inquiries. If I go on to like the rename of the dashboard, I can click here, which basically I'm gonna have like a suggestion based on the content on the dashboard. And also when I upload the document, and I did that earlier, but let's do that here now. I'm gonna update this one. Actually, I have a management team widget CSV. I'm gonna upload it. The name didn't exist, and it tells me management team compensation overview, and I have metadata, and I create it, and now it becomes accessible here. But all of these uses AI workflows that we make so that users have a better experience when using the product. But because of the same concept of like some firms do not want their data to leave their servers or like go into third party, so we enable them to turn that off. So you can go into here general, and you can disable these here, these enable AI powered features, and you can even over on top of here to see which ones we're talking about. And once that happens, that basically then means that you don't have none of the AI features being worked on. So for instance, right now here, I'm going to create a new chat, and if I say hello, it should remain new chat because the feature is turned off, so no data leaves out. And then in terms of data storage, which I mentioned earlier, we don't store any data apart from if there are static files, because we need to store them somewhere so that we can enable sharing, so that we can enable Copilot to have access to the documents, and so we can enable you to log out and log in different machines and still have access to it. But if you have like an S3 and you want to host your documents and static files locally, we can work with you to make that happen. One thing I would like to highlight is the flexibility of the interface. It's very flexible. You can change the size of any widget. You can close them. You can reorganize them really fast. You can add more tabs on the top if you want, test. And because available here, you can create like a chart from this data directly. And then, for instance, like this. You can go back here if you don't want to see this view. If you want to do the raw data, you can visualize that data. You can change it to light mode, and so it's super customizable to whatever needs you have. You can also organize the dashboards in folders. So if you want to organize it and you have a folder that you call it 2024 Q3 or something like that, you can move that dashboard inside it, and now it becomes available here. And then you also have flexibility in terms of the widget type. So basically you can see that here this is a TradingView widget, but you also have this one for ticker information. These ones are news, which means that you can actually click on it and read the news article. But there are also other types of widgets that are worth mentioning. So if I open a new dashboard, we can add, for instance, we have RSS feeds, that basically allows you to manage your own like RSS feeds, which means that you can now click on a news article and it will open it. But you have also the iframe, which I showed earlier, that is a website, and you can do something like add OpenBB website here. You have things like the notes widget, and also like charting from TradingView, which allows you to add, for instance, let's say we want EMA. You can do double EMA, you can do that. You can also do triple, which you can see here, but you can also do financials, for instance, if you want to add the revenue over time, that is also possible. You also have here the earnings. You can add notes here. There's a lot of flexibility, and we tend to build the widgets that are best to support the type of data that comes in. So let's give an example. For instance, let's say that we are real-time Forex heat map, for instance. It shows like this. Right now is the weekend, so the market is closed, but basically this is a live widget, so the data pops over time. We also have something like it's called tape, this one, ticker tape performance, and so you have something that drags over time. And so there's a lot of flexibility around the widgets, and the way we design them is based on the data from the vendor that we support. We make the best widget to display that data. But what's on our roadmap over time is to basically open the gates and allow firms to build the best widget visual for the data that they want to feed into the product. And that's our next step. Earlier, I said that one of the capabilities of the product is the collaboration that it enables users. And so let me start a template, which I want to share with you. Let's create the comparison template. What this does is basically enables you to have a watch list of companies you want to track and compare against each other versus one of reference, and then basically you compare like widgets side by side. And so if I click on NVIDIA, you'll see only this side is changing. And so let's say that I want to add more data. I want to add, let's start by adding new data. I downloaded the PDF earlier today. I'm going to use that one, and it's uploading. The name and metadata, it's perfect. I'm going to say uploaded, has been uploaded. Let's say that I want to add a note widget. It's here, and I'm going to call it, I don't know, Apple versus NVIDIA in this case, section 1, and then you can have bullet point 2, bullet point 0.3, it doesn't matter, you can write anything. Let's say that I'm also interested for some reason to add like a US yield, which in this case comes actually from my custom backend. So this is something that a user of Pro won't have access by default, but it comes from a backend, which we can actually see from going into the data connectors is here on the OpenBB platform that has been integrated. So now I have access to all of these data, and let's say that I want to share these with someone from my team because I want to hear their thoughts, or we want to maybe discuss on that. And that's very simple. The way we do this is, first let me show you. This is the account I'm going to share with is completely empty, as you can see. And so when I come here, I'm going to click on share. It's going to say that some are confidential. And in this case, you can put the email from the person on your team as long as they are within the same organization, so your firm's organization. But otherwise, if they are already here, they are already like highlighted, you can just click here and you can select view. In this case, in the future, we'll allow edit as well. And you can click save. And now I go into this dashboard and you see that it pops up. Now, when I click here, you see not just the data that is given by OpenBB is visible, but you can also see the PDF, you can also see the notes, and you can also see the custom backend. And so this truly enables collaboration between teams. And as I mentioned, in the future, there's going to be more granularity around the control from a user perspective on what they can turn on and off for each user. But right now it's just view only, but if you want to manage it, have access to it, you can simply duplicate it and then you'll have access to it. Let's say that your manager wants to have access to a dashboard, but he doesn't really want to interact with him. He just wants to see the data, some visuals, and he wants to have some notes on how you are thinking about it, whether it's to make an investment decision, whether it's to inform him on how the stock market is performing today. It doesn't matter. That is really simple using our product. So all you gotta do is we can use this equity dashboard, and you can see this is quite a bit different types of data. I can click here, I can say generate report, export it as a PDF. There we go. And now that should be available to me, and I can see it here. And you can see that it has a nice rendering, which is perfect, so I can send it to my manager. And of course, if you care about a light team, you can change the theme to white and then basically export as a report like this, and then you can print it, for instance. For most of the widgets that you'll see from OpenBB, we have access to the data, and we have not just the display license, but also the redistribution license. So that means that you can download or export the data as you wish. So if we go into the financials tab, for instance, one thing you can do, you can click here and you can click export, and you can select what is the data format. So if you want to export something into Excel, you can do that. Now the problem is that you are getting something static in time. And so for us, it was important to make sure that users knew that they could have access to the data and create models using Excel. And so we allow them to click here and go into functions. And basically you have the exact commands that you need in order to have access to these data on both Excel or Python. And so let's say we want to explore the Excel. Let's say that we want to explore income. I already logged in onto my Excel add-in. I can do it here. And in this case, because I actually know this command, I know that I need to transpose it. Transpose. And now you can see that the data here is dynamic. So let's say that I put here a different ticker. You'll see that if I come here and then I select this cell here, you'll see that the data is going to be refreshed with a different company. And if I change, you'll see that it happens. And so basically you can create your models using all of the widgets data from OpenBB. Now, I mean, the entire narrative has been around the Copilot. So what happens with the tables that are generated from the Copilot? So let's say I ask create a 5x5 random table with numbers and column headers. And I mean, I showed earlier that we can create a widget table from this data, and then we can create like lines on the chart. But we also have this capability here, which enables me to copy it to clipboard, which basically means that I can come into Excel and paste it, and I have access to that data directly. And so it allows you to work really fast along with Excel if that's your preferred method, or if someone on your team is using OpenBB, they are creating these dashboards for you, and you are the Excel pro, so you want to have access to the same data, and then you pull all of that onto Excel. And we're working as well to make it so that custom backends and connections of the data are easily pullable from Excel directly.